to have, because their own lives are affecting other people. Also, money will be expended on them for treatment which will not have been expended if they were well. Therefore, they feel sad that they are taking the resources of the people around them. Some people, do you know that even when they are very sick, they don't want to say it, because they feel that if they say it, the people around them will now begin to spend money. Some people even prefer that, well, if I'm going to die, let me just die. Let me not waste their money. Let me not take their money. Let me not, all kinds of things happen because of illness. So this is the kind of thing that happened to this woman. Her concern will become the concern of others. And the problem of being bedridden will definitely affect everybody, financially, in terms of time, in terms of their stewardship. So that was the kind of thing that was happening when Jesus came in. Now, on the coming of Jesus, which we read in verse 14, when Jesus came into the house, he found her in that situation. The other accounts, one of them says that they told him that she was sick. Here they said when Jesus came into the house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law. So he saw her. She must be in a situation that exposed her to be seen. So he saw her. And Jesus therefore went into a house where there was a problem. He saw the mother-in-law lying in bed with this fever. Then we're told he touched her and the fever left her. The fever took its flight from her. And then we're told, and immediately she got up and began to serve. So she served him, she served all of them. Her irrelevance was removed. The attention the family had on her because of her illness could now be diverted into other useful causes. She was no longer a financial drain pipe, and certainly no longer a prayer concern for the family. Her helpless son-in-law, Peter, will now definitely breathe a sign of relief, because when your mother-in-law is sick, normally I believe that you, the son-in-law, it is your major responsibility. And if we have any son-in-law who is not doing that, you are a wrong son-in-law. Your mother-in-law is sick, you are supposed to help her. You are supposed to take care of her. Don't give any excuse. There's no excuse. It's your responsibility, because your mother-in-law is your mother. And where you are the husband of her daughter, then you are the son. You are the older son she has of the two of you. Some people don't talk to their mother-in-laws. They should repent and start talking to them. It's part of your responsibility to take care of your mother-in-law. But now that this woman was healed, definitely there will be joy for the son-in-law, because they will now become financially stable and stop spending money on her treatment. His life, or all the people around, will stop wasting their precious time. The precious time of the family that was consumed by that situation of fever will stop being wasted. They could now face their own program better, and their programs will stop being affected because of her illness. They will not be able to concentrate. So all those things will definitely be the experience of this family. So, now, interestingly, in the passage, before this passage of the healing of Peter's mother-in-law, we have something that happened in Capernaum. Something happened in Capernaum. So I want to look at the context of this healing of Peter's mother-in-law, and then try to do some comparison and see some differences. Now, let me look at the context for you in the same Matthew chapter 8, reading from verse 5. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, I told you that Capernaum was Peter's home, and Capernaum, Jesus did a lot of ministry in Capernaum. And no wonder in the end, Jesus himself was saying, woe to you Chorazin and woe to you Capernaum, because if the miracles that were done in you had been done in Sodom and Gomorrah, the people there will have repented. So there was so much done in Capernaum. And today, if you go to the land of Israel and you enter Capernaum, it is written boldly, Capernaum, the home of Jesus. Now, Jesus was from Nazareth, but the Capernaum people feel all his ministry, most of the ministry was in Capernaum. Now, so let's see what happened in Capernaum. When Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home, paralyzed and in terrible suffering. Jesus said to him, I will go and heal him. The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was astonished and said to those following him, I tell you the truth, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And verse 13 says, then Jesus said to the centurion, go, it will be done just as you believed it will. And his servant was healed at that very hour. That was in Capernaum. So the centurion whose servant was sick was healed in Capernaum. It's like when Jesus came to Peter's house, the story is not telling us in Capernaum again, because they were already in Capernaum. Now, so it's important to observe these two accounts that happened in the same town, in Capernaum. There is some kind of similarities and differences. Now let's look at it. In Capernaum on that day, both the servant of the centurion, by the way, a centurion was a commander over 100. That's why the Yoruba Bible will call the centurion Balogun Orun. You know, sometimes when I was a young boy, I was calling it Balogun Orun. Balogun Orun means the captain of heaven. But Balogun Orun is captain of Ogorun. You know, Orun is a short form of 100. So some of these, we even learned language through the Bible there. So both were sick. The centurion's servant was lying sick, and Peter's mother-in-law was lying sick. Both of them were incapacitated. They were of concern. Now we find out that both of them received the attention of Jesus. Jesus wanted to go to the centurion's house, The centurion said, you don't need to come to my house. Just speak. I'm a man of authority. When I speak, it is done. And I know when you speak, it shall be done. Jesus so exalted his faith that he had not seen this kind of faith before. Now, and at the end, both of them were healed. You know, we are told that the centurion's servant became healed that very hour. And, of course, Peter's mother-in-law was also healed. But let us notice some differences so that we can widen our scope of faith. Let's notice some differences so that we can widen our belief. So that we can widen our belief. And we find these differences. One, in the case of the centurion's servant, Jesus was sought and approached. But in the case of Peter's mother-in-law, Jesus was not approached or sought. Nobody went for Jesus that this woman is sick in the house. But one went to seek Jesus directly. That's the centurion, to help him. In other words, the centurion went to invite Jesus into the situation that they were in. But in the case of this mother-in-law, they did not go for Jesus. Jesus came uninvited. He came. Therefore, there are a lot of times when we think that God does for us only the things we ask him to do. Meanwhile, Ephesians 3:20 tells us, to him who does what? Exceedingly, he does exceedingly and abundantly more than we can ask or imagine. In other words, our appreciation of God's intervention in our lives must not be limited to those things we asked him to do. Because a lot of times we do not ask him to do things and the credit goes to him. Because he came in to help us himself without us going to ask him. So in the centurion's case, another difference is that in the centurion's case, Jesus did not enter his house. But in Peter's mother-in-law's case, Jesus entered the house and even touched her. He even touched her. So you see a difference there. Jesus did not enter the house, but the centurion's servant was healed that hour. In Peter, so Jesus is not restricted to only one method of handling cases. Jesus can win the battle whether with many or with few. You know, it doesn't really matter. So here Jesus did not go, but she was healed. In the other account, Jesus went before the healing took place. Another one, in the centurion's case, Jesus didn't see the patient. But here, in the case of Peter's mother-in-law, Jesus saw her and touched her. He saw her and touched. So he didn't even need to see the sick man physically before the man will be healed. So Jesus can heal those that he is able to see, and even those that appear to be invisible to him. But nothing is invisible to his eyes. Then we find out that in the centurion's house, of course I've mentioned it, Jesus touched the sick servant. That's in Peter's house. In the centurion's house, Jesus touched the sick servant by willing it in his heart. He just willed it. Jesus doesn't have to even touch with hand before there is healing. If he just in his heart wills it, it's like I'm sitting down now. I will in my heart that if I should get up where he's sitting, and he just gets up. I've not said to him, if I get up. I've not held his hand to pull him up, but in my heart, I want him up, and all of a sudden, you just see if I'm up. That is the kind of power that Jesus has. He doesn't have to speak. He doesn't have to do anything. He can just will it in his heart. Somebody met him, a leprous man. If thy will, thou can make me clean. And even though Jesus spoke, he just said, I will, be thou clean. But where you can know that even the heart of Jesus communicates, and the heart of Jesus changes things without a word spoken. In Cana of Galilee, when they